Welcome back, guys, to the exercise training sessions. And we discussed about pivot and unpivot. That's the place, that's the transformation which we discussed before ending the last session. So let's continue from there. I'm going to take one more data flow task, and I'm going to discuss about a couple of transformations in today's session. Okay. So what is the first transformation we're going to discuss? We have covered almost all. And let me take an import column transformation. I can take export column, but import column is better one to start with, and then we can go for export column. So this import column and export column transformations, generally you use these transformations to import files like images, text files from your directory or your drive to SQL Server database. In the same way, export you will use to do the reverse process. Like you can get the image file from SQL Server database to your desktop or to your drive, to any folder in your machine. And you can imagine how rarely this will be used. I mean, this is not so frequently, but if requirement demands, you have no other option. If you want, the requirement says that, for example, while inserting the data, okay, let's assume they are inserting players information. Player ID, player name, player batsman type, left hand or right hand, bowler type, left hand or right hand, and at the end they also like to insert the image of the player. So in that case, what they will do is they'll have all the data in a text file and the image path will be there in some folder. You understood what I'm saying? In the same file, let's say ID, name, left hand or right hand batsman or left hand or right hand bowler, and country he belongs to, state, his personal information, and at the end image path. So there will be path, and that path will have the file of this guy, the picture of this guy. So while importing to the database, you will use that file path to import the image to the database. You understood what I'm saying? So this import column helps in achieving that requirement. Okay, let's see how to configure the same to get the image files from your desktop to your SQL Server database. So the first thing that I need for that purpose is a database table with image data type, right? So let me create that first. Let me go to SQL Server. Let me connect to AdventureWorks database. Okay. So create table image test. Okay. I'll give only 3 to 4 columns. I'll give one ID. I'll name it as integer identity column. I mean, which automatically increments. I don't need to pass value to this. Okay. And the second one, I'll give path where it is. Varchar of, let's say, 200 characters, or let me go for 500 characters. So path means what is the path where the file is present. If you want to store the path also, you can use this. Okay. And the third thing is picture. Okay. I'm going for image. So if I execute this, I've created a table with 3 columns. One is identity. So hence that means I have to pass the data for the remaining 2. And if you see, these 2 are not mandatory columns, that means not, these 2 are nullable columns. So even if you pass or not, but this column will accept only images and this one will take only varchar kind of data. Now let me use this table, and what I'm going to insert into this, I'm going to insert a couple of pictures into this, JPG files into this. So let me find some pictures. So I have so many here. The size will be pretty huge, I think. Okay, this is reasonable. This is not too huge. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'll take only 4 to 5 files and then I'll try to move that one to the database. If I move 5 files, that means I can move 100 files, right? So I need to store that information, the file information, like what is this file and how to get this. So for that, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna rename this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm taking 5 files, or else let me try something else. I think you don't feel bad if I use my pictures. Or let me try this one. This is the best one. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. So I'm gonna add a text file. Text file, and I'm gonna store the information. Files, like what is the path and what is the file name. If you see, this extension is .jpg. So I'm gonna give all the file paths here. File path, the first one is 1.jpg, right? I need to have that information. I have to loop through, right? I have to get for every file, right? So I need to have that information of all the files. So it can be either database table or some text file. I'm taking text file as example. The source is text file for the file path. It can be in the database also, right? So let me do the same for all the files. I don't know how many I have. Let me try. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I think these are the different files I have. So let me save this. So here in this example, I'm taking text file as source. So where I'll have path of all the images that I want to import. So the same thing can be from SQL Server database. What will be the difference if it is from SQL Server database? The source will vary. Now I'm going to use flat file source to get the path of each file. If it is in SQL Server, I'll use OLE DB source. That's the only difference. Okay, but you need to have somewhere the file information. Where is the file located, and what is the extension path, and so on. Now let me set the connection to the particular file where I have all the information about all the files that I'm gonna import. Let me double click on this, and let me set a new flat file source pointing to the one that I've created now. Okay, I'll name it as image files. And where is the path? The path is in pics folder, and it's files and everything. Column name in the first row. Fine, and you can see it is giving me 1 to 12. If I take any path and if I go to run and if I execute it, it should open that image like this. Okay, so that means we're good. All the paths are fine. So the input is fine. So I'm gonna get the file path of each image file through the flat file source. Now let me configure import column. So here you have to select what is the column that is having the file information, the path and all, and in the input and output properties, automatically the input will have that file path, whatever the column you are using, and the output you need to add the column. Okay, and you can name the column something like pics or images, and the data type you can select it as either image or text or file and so on. And the only thing that you have to do here is you have to take the ID 24 and set the ID here in this. The file path variable, the input column is there, right? The file data column ID property will be there. For that you need to set the input. Now that's the only property we need to set. Let me execute it and see whether it is working fine without any issues first. So up to here it's fine. It read 12 rows, and the 12 import column is done. Now the next step is exporting. I mean, I'm getting the data. I'm getting the files using this import column transformation. What I need to do, I need to push this to the destination. What is the destination? Here in this case, I'm going for OLE DB destination. Why? Because I have created a database table to which I want to move the data. So if I go here, connect to this, and if I select this, here it is asking for the table which I have to use to insert the images. I think it's image test. Done. And let me go to mappings. Here I have to set the ID column is identity column. I have set, and I don't need to specify any mapping for that. And file path will have the path, okay, and peaks will have the image file. So let me click on OK and execute. Let's see whether it will store the data, whether it will store the images in the database or not. Okay, it is saying it's successful. Let's see by executing the query here. So the query is still open, and you can see this is how it stores the image files. Can you see? This is one image file, and this is another one, and so on. Like that, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, until 12 files. So this is how we can make use of import column to import image files or text files into the database tables. So in the same way you can use for text files and so on. So I suggest you guys to give a try for the text files, and if you have any questions, you can ping me. I'll be always available to answer your questions. Now let's jump into the next transformation, that is export column transformation, the opposite of this one. Okay, this imports the images. Now the other one is export. It exports the images. Okay, let's see. Let me take a new data flow and let me disable it. Once the work is done, I'm disabling all the stuff, and I'll take a new one, new data flow, and I'll go to edit, and I'll go for export column. It is here. So what this guy will do? This guy is the reverse process. So this guy simply takes the files from the data, they take the data from the database and convert it into files. Okay, let's see how this guy is gonna convert. So for doing the same, what I'm gonna do here is I'm creating a new folder here, and I'll name it as archive. Don't worry about the spelling if it is wrong, and I'm moving all the files into the archive. Why? Because I'm gonna copy the files from the database to this particular folder. I can choose different folder, but the path is having the same folder. So again, I have to update the path. It will take some time. So that is why I'm choosing the same path to copy the files from the database to the folder. Let's see how to configure it. So again, the first thing what you need to do is set the connection and get the information. So now we have the information, we have the files in the database. So let me connect to the database and connect to the image test. And if you see the columns, these three are the columns, and you can preview the data. So this is the path system.byte, okay, that is picture. So it will be like that, images. And now let me connect this one to export column transformation. So if I select this export column, if I connect to export column transformation, if I go to edit, here it will ask what is the column you want to export. See, it will find out what is the column that is eligible for export, okay, and what is the path column. And if you see, the path column is path. This is the one where we have path. So these columns, if you select here, it's automatically showing only one. Why? Because it will show only those kind of database which can hold the text files or image files. In the same way, path means it can be only in varchar data type. So that is why it is showing only path. And here append, truncate, and create new. So these three options will be there, and there are many combinations for this. I'll show you in Microsoft MSDN site. I think it will be there. Why? Because append means if you want to append it to the existing file or not. Let's say it is a text file, if you want to append to the existing file or not. Here the last one will say whether it is already exists or not, whether the file exists or not. If you don't check this, that means the file does not exist, and it will create a file. Okay, and if you check this And if you check the first one, that means the file is already there and you want to append the data to that existing file. And the second one is truncate, to delete and create a new one. So it will have different combinations. These three will have. I'll show you all the three combinations that, all the different combinations that are available for these three options. So what you need to select here is the extract column, what column you want to extract, and what is the path where you want to store. So that's the only properties you need to set, and I've set the same. Let me export it. Let me execute it. It is saying it is the package is successful, it ran successfully. So let's go and see the folder whether the files are created or not. It is somewhere here, and you can see the files are created. Okay, so this is how it will be. Now what will happen if I re-execute it? I'm executing the task again. What will happen if I re-execute it? I have not checked anything like force truncate or force append and so on, or I have not even said that the file exists. I have not checked any of the option, right? So it is failing, saying that if you go to the if you go to this, it will say already the file exists. So the file exists and cannot be overwritten. If you allow append property is false, if the allow append property is false and the force truncate is set to false, the existing of the file will cause a failure. So that means you need to check that. You need to make use of the properties. If the file is already available, then you have to truncate it, or you have to provide the information, what power it has. Let's say there are some files, and if you are executing this package, and if you don't want to overwrite, if the file is already available, then you need to take care of, you need to handle it. If the file is very critical one or important one, in that case you cannot take risk, right? So that is why these three options are provided. Whether you want to delete and add, or whether you want to append to the existing file, or whether the file exists or not, some information, some hint. I'll explain. So this is how you can make use of the export column option, export column transformation, to export the image files or text files from the database to the folder or any drive. Now, so here, if you select this option, let's say the third one, it means that, okay, the file exists or not. If you check it, that means the file exists. And if you try to append to that, okay, if you check this one and this one, okay, that means a file is there and try to append data to that. That means if the file is not there, then it will throw an error saying that file is not there, text file or something. In the same way, if you remove this, that means file is not there, so create one and write the data. And if the file is there, and if you want to force truncate it, you can go for it, force truncate. And these two will not be possible case. You cannot select these two at a time. In the same way, these three at a time you cannot select. So these are the different combinations that are available. And if you go to the my MSDN site and check for different combinations for allow, append, force truncate, and file exist, then it will give you 6 to 8 combinations. And it's better to have a look at all those combinations once to get complete picture about the export column transformation. So this is about export column transformation, and let's go to the next one. The next one is pretty tricky one, and it needs a lot of .NET experience. If you know .NET experience, then you can do it in a better way. Okay, let me take a new data flow task to explain the same, and let me go to this. And the next one is script component. It is very close to script task that is available in the control flow items. So there also you can go for some custom coding. Here, in the same way, the script component will help you in create a custom data source. See, a custom data flow source, or a custom data flow transformation, or a custom data flow destination. That means you can, if you want to have any, if all the things that are available here provided by Microsoft is not fulfilling the requirement that you are having, and if you want to have a custom or custom data source, then you can do that using script component transformation. If you drag and drop the script component transformation, it will open a pop-up which will ask you how you want to use the transformation. One transformation can be used as either source or destination or transformation. Let me show you an example for source first. And if I select a source, then this transformation is set as a source. And you can configure the source related stuff. So source means what will be there? No inputs, and it will have some outputs, right? It will have output. Let me show how to configure the output of the source. How to configure the script component to make it as a source, or to make it to act as a source. So the first thing you have to do here is what language you want to take, whether it's C# or VB, in which language you are familiar with, you can pick that. These two are .NET languages. Most of the guys who are into .NET is familiar with these two concepts. Now, output columns you have to set. If you see, this is the first output you're having, and I'll name it as employee info. Okay, I'm naming the output as employee info. So for that, I need to add columns like ID, and let me add one more, name, and let me add designation. Okay, I've added 3, and I'll set this as varchar or string data type. String of 50 characters is fine, and I'll make this one also as string data type. So first I'm configuring the output columns that will flow from the script component, which is acting as source in our case, and ID, let it be integer. Now this is set, and you have to go to script back and click on edit script to write your custom code. Okay, and there will be a lot of methods which you can override, and you can write your own functionality. And people who don't know .NET or Java or any programming languages don't get tensed by listening to new terminology like override, overload, and so on. If you're familiar with .NET, you can say that you know this component, or else it's not a big deal. Like pre-execute, before executing the actual work, if you want to do anything, you can write it here. And post-execute, after executing. Like if you see, if you want to open any connection, then you can use it in pre-execute. If you want to close any SQL connection, you can use it in, you can do it in post-execute. In the same way, create new output rows. That means add new data to the rows. You created output columns, you created 3 columns. Now you have to add output to that. You have to add data to that output, right? So that functionality will go here. Okay, this is the place that functionality will fall. And these are the 2 classes, buffer wrapper and component wrapper, which will have all the methods, so which you can override it. Here you can see all the things are override. Override of post execute, override of pre-execute, and override of create new output rows. In the same way, there will be so many other functions which you can override in the main class. Prime output and create new output rows. This is the function which we are overriding. Can you see here? So this is the function. Now let me show you how we can add rows. The first thing what you have to do is, what is the output name that we have given? We have given an output name of employee something, right? So this is the one. It will become, if I give the name as employee info, then the buffer will be added to that. Okay, employee info dot buffer. If you click on add, it will show the first function, add row. That means you are adding a new row to the employee info buffer. That means employee info output. So that output has 3 columns. The first column, employee info buffer dot, what is the first column name? ID. You can find the columns here. ID, you can directly assign the value. And what is the second column? Employee info buffer dot name. Obviously I'll give my name, the first one I get in my mind. And the third thing, employee info buffer dot, what is the third column? Designation. So I'll give designation. I have given a string, right, where a string of 50 characters length. So I'll give project lead. Okay, and the syntax issue, close this. Now I have added one row. If I want to add more rows, copy the same and give the next information whatever you want to give. I'll give location and I'll give project manager. So once you have added all the rows that are required, then you can build the solution once. And it is succeeded. Let me close this guy and let me close. Now this will act as source and it will pass some data to the output. Let me show you the data. It will pass some data to the next transformation. I'm taking an audit transformation just to set the data viewer and see whether the data is flowing properly as expected or not, whatever the data we have given in the code. Let me execute the task. It is executed and you can see ID, name and designation is flowing. So this script component is acting as a source here. Okay. So if you want to extend the functionality of the existing data sources, like if you say you have some file which is not having any delimiter, but you know how to split it, then you can go for the script component where you can write your custom code. I'll show a couple of examples, more examples on script component as source and destination and also transformation. So hope you understood now how you can set it as source and what is the output columns and how can we do the same stuff. In the same way, you can have more than one output. Now I have configured only one output, right? So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to configure one more output with data getting from SQL Server. Okay, let me show you that now. Now let me show you a couple of other options, like we can use connections in this one, like you can connect to SQL Server or anything like that to get the data from there and pass it, and you can modify the data before passing through output. So for that, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create one more output. This is one output, right? I'm going to explain you how to add multiple outputs. So here the next output I'm adding, I'll name it as image info. Okay, and in this image info I'm adding only two columns. The first one is ID and the second one is path. I'm getting ID and path. Okay, and the path is I'm going for string data type. I'll go for 500 character. I don't know the exact character. Now I need to set a connection. I need to connect to SQL Server, right? So what I can do here is I can use connection managers. If you go here, you can give some name, something like guys who are familiar with .NET, concentrate. Okay, I'll give the connection as ADV works. And the connection manager, I'm taking a new connection, new ADO.NET connection I'm going for. And I'll connect to a new database. I'll give that source server as localhost. And I'm just connecting to SQL Server. I think it's /SQL dev if I'm not wrong. Okay, AdventureWorks DW, the source, the connection is set. So now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna make use of this connection in my script component. Okay, I'm gonna show you how this connection can be used in my script component. So I'm going back to the script component. I've created one connection pointing to AdventureWorks DW database, and here I can override a couple of extra methods. Before going to that, first what I'm going to do here is I'm going to inherit, right? We call it as inherit in .NET. I'm going to inherit SQL client. Okay, that's the first thing I'm going to do. And I'm going to declare a couple of variables that I need for this stuff. Let's say the first thing is I have to get the connection, whatever I have created outside. Couple of seconds back, I've created one connection, right? ADO.NET connection pointing to AdventureWorks database. So I need to get that connection, and I can get that into something like ID TS connection type is there. This is the one which you have to use. ID TS connection info 100, and I'll name it as connection manager. Okay, I'm declaring a couple of variables that I need for this purpose, and I'm taking SQL connection, SQL connection. I'll name it as con, and I'll go for one object test, and I'll go for I need data reader to read through each and every row. SQL data reader, I'll name it as DR, and what else I need. Okay, this is enough for now. And now I have to override a method, and the method is acquire connections. You are going to acquire connections from outside. Okay, the one which you have created outside in the connections tab, you are going to acquire the same into your script task. I'll show you how we can do that. Public, I'm overriding, better I acquire connections. You can see this is the one which you are going to acquire. So the functionality what you are going to write here is first create a connection to the outside one. So you have to use the connection manager for that to get the connection into IDTS connection info. So con manager is equal to this dot connections, that means all the connections that we have created outside, dot, you will have the connection that you have created, that is AdventureWorks, right? This is the connection which you have created. Now I'm gonna acquire this connection. What is the problem here? Is connection info or manager? Let me take manager here. Okay, here it is. Okay, fine. Now what you have to do is you have to acquire the value of it to some object data type or something. So let me take a test. This is the object variable what I have declared, and I'm gonna use the connection manager dot acquire connection to acquire the connection from the value, the connection, complete connection here. Now what is the third step you have to do here is the typecasting. You know, right? You have to convert this one to your SQL Server connection. Now this is a different connection type. You can say IDTS connection manager 100. So you need to convert it into a SQL Server connection. So for the same, I'll go for connection. How will typecast in C#.NET? In VB it is C type, right? I think this is how we will go for in. I'm gonna typecast into SQL connection type, the object test. Okay. So the steps here, whatever I have done is I've created a connection manager. Sorry, let me close the other one. I've created a connection manager. I've created a SQL connection object, and I've created one different. I've taken one object variable, and here into this connection manager, which I have declared, I bought this connection and I have acquired the connection into this object. And why? Because only object can be converted. I think it will create problem when you directly use this one to convert to the SQL connection. So I just moved it to object variable, and then I'm typecasting it to SQL Server connection. Now we have done that. We have converted the type to the connection, whatever we have created outside, to the SQL Server connection type. In the pre-execute, what we are going to do here is we are going to declare the command and all. Okay, so people with .NET background can easily understand what is that command and all. The command means like SQL command, using which you will pass the SQL statement which needs to be executed, SQL or any database statement. So I'm declaring a SQL command, and I'll name it as CMD is equal to new SQL command, and I can write the query inside it. As you all know, I'm taking select ID comma path from images, right? Is the table name that I have given, image test. Okay, this is my SQL command. Now I'm defining a reader. Here I have a reader, right? I'm going to read the data into this data reader, the output of the command. So let me set the command connection as the SQL connection which I have created, that is CON, and let me open the connection here. I open the connection, and now I'm going to read the data into that data reader, execute reader. So this is it. Now the data will be in data reader. Now the final step is I am reading the data into my data reader. I have data in my data reader. So what I have to do, I have to write the data into my output row so that I can do in my create new output row. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna loop through the data reader. dr.read. That means as long as the number of records that are flowing from that do the same job whatever I'm gonna explain here. So what is the output I have created for image stuff? I think image info dot buffer dot add new row. I'm adding a new row. Whatever I have done here, the same thing I'm gonna do, but for a new output, image info buffer dot id is equal to the data reader id, that is dr dot get in 16 of 0 first column. And what is the second one? The second one is the path. So what is the name I have given for the path here? I think it's path. Okay. So this is string type. So I'll get a dr.string. I'll give 1. So if you check this, I have set the while loop, and what this guy will do is this guy will loop through each and every record, and it will get the values into the output columns that we have created, that is ID and path. Now once everything is done, after post at the time of post execute, or even you can override different methods to close the connections if you want to close the connections that you have created for this particular purpose. Let's say like there is a override function called release connections, just like acquire connections. You have one method. Let me go to that public override release connections. I'm gonna release the connection I have created, that is connection close. So now let me take step by step what I have done. I have created one connection. You all know that, right? The connection ADO.NET connection pointing to AdventureWorks DW database. Here I'm getting that connection into this variable, which is of type ID TS connection manager 100, and then I'm acquiring the value of the connection into this test and object variable, and I'm converting the object variable into SQL connection. This is called typecasting, like convert function in SQL Server. So I'm converting to SQL Server. Why? Because I can use SQL Server in my script component, so I'm converting it into SQL Server. And as part of pre-execute, now I have connection. I'm opening the connection here. That means I'm opening the gates to connect to the SQL Server, the path, whatever, the connection string, whatever we have defined in this AdventureWorks connection outside. And I'm taking a new command, that means select ID, path from image test. So this query will be executed in the database. Let's say like this. This will be the output of the query. And I'm getting all the data into the reader, data reader, the data reader, whatever I have created here. Reader means it will read record by record. Okay. And as part of create new rows, what I'm doing here is I'm reading through each and every record. And for every record, I'm adding one output row, and I'm adding the value of the ID and path from the database, whatever it is pulling. Get into 16 of 0 means the first column and data type, and this is the second column and the data type, that is string is the second data type. So that is what I have said. Now let me build this guy first. And this is the step by step, whatever I have done, all the complete stuff that I have done as that I've configured for pulling the data from the SQL Server databases. And let me close this guy and execute and see whether it will execute successfully or not. Now I should have two outputs, one for the employee info and another one for image info. So this is the image info output. So let me set a data viewer for this one too and see whether the data that is being pulled from the database table is properly flowing through the pipeline or not. Let me execute it. Now you can see it is flowing through two outputs. The first output, this is employee info, whatever I've created manually. And the second one, I'm pulling the data from database. So this is how it is not mandatory that you have to hard code the values, but the columns, output columns are hard coded. That the values, like you have to add the values like whatever I've shown you in the first case. For this case, it is not that. You can get the data from SQL Server too. Okay. This is how an example, and you can see ID and path data is flowing through the second output, whatever we have created. And there is one more advantage using this. I mean, it is as it is a script component in which you can go for all the .NET language. It will give you a lot of power to connect to any kind of source. Like you can connect to text files also. You can get the data and so on. Okay. And you can connect to SQL Server directly without creating connections outside. I've created one connection outside and show you, right? Instead of that, you can directly create the connections inside it, and you can have a lot of functionality. I've shown you very simple functionality here. Apart from this, you can have hell of functionality. So now we have one text file created, right, with the path, you remember? So let me create an output for that one too. File info. Okay. I hope you still remember the file that I've created this at the start of this session. It has only one column, that is path. I'll take it as varchar data type. I'll give the length as 500. Now let me go to the script task. Now this is the third output I'm going to give. That means I'm showing you that we can go for n number of outputs and different data. I mean, you can get the data in a different ways for different outputs. The first output, if you see, I have hard coded it. I have hard coded by using add row and so on, this info. And second one is I'm looping through data reader and then adding the information. And the third one, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the data from the text file, whatever we have created with all the images path in it. So for that, I need a couple of things like I think IO function, IO namespace I need. So I'll use it, system.io. Okay. And the second thing, I need a couple of variables like stream reader and all. Stream reader, I'll name it as SR. And I also need okay, private file path. Okay, so I've created 3 variables and I'm going to build this solution. Before continuing here, I need to create a connection outside which I'm going to acquire here. So that means I need to create a connection to the file where I'm gonna which I'm gonna read it here. So file connection is the name I'm gonna give, and where is the file that is available? I think it's image files. This is the file connection that I've created, right? Image files, guys, don't go for blank face. This is the file I'm pointing to. Image files means this file. Okay. Now let me go back to the script component. I've created the file connection, and let me go back to the script component and acquire this file connection. I'm going to acquire this file connection. So here in acquire connection, this step, is for acquiring SQL connection. Now I'm going to acquire flat file connection. How can we do that? In the same way that we have done. This is the connection manager, right? I'm going to use this connection manager. I can use the same, or I can create one more. CONMMGR, an extra name I have given. I can use the same. Why? Because this use is over after this. So I can reuse the same, but I'm taking a new one. Is equal to dot connections dot file connection. Okay. Now what is the string? I'm gonna use the string file path is equal to, I'm gonna do the same typecasting how I have done for SQL Server typecasting. String of CONNMGGR dot acquire connection of null. Now the flat file connection string value will be assigned to this file path. So the next step is, in pre-execute I have to read the data from the file. So I'm going to add one line for reading the data into the file, and I'm going to read it to my stream reader, that is SR. SR is equal to new stream reader, and what is the file path. So this is how you will read the data from a file in .NET. Don't get worried here. If you know the .NET concepts, you can easily understand it. Okay. Now my job is to add the new rows. So I don't know how many records are there in the file. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to loop through string new line is equal to, I'm getting the value, I'm getting the line from, every time I'm going to get new line from the particular file here. What is the variable name I have given for stream reader? It is SR. New line is equal to SR dot read line. Okay. Now the same while condition. While this new line not equal to null, that means it has some value. Do the job whatever I'm going to specify in this while loop. So what I'm going to specify here is, I'm going to add out what is the output buffer I have given? File output, right? What is the output name I have given? Anyone remember that? Image or something? Image info buffer? No. File info buffer? No. Who remember that here? What's the name I have given? So the name I have given is file info buffer. So let me go to this file info buffer dot add row, and file info buffer dot the name of the column is path is equal to columns of 0. Oops, sorry. Is equal to new line. So now let me explain what I have done. I've created one flat file connection outside in the connections page, and here using this I am getting the flat file connection into the string, that is file path. And here I have defined as stream reader, and for that stream reader I have given that file path. That means whatever that is available in that file will be read into the stream reader. Now here in the stream reader I am using a read line function, a read line method to read every line, and whenever it is not empty. Whenever the read line is not empty, I am looping through and adding a new row and getting the value of the new line into this one. Okay. Now I need to close this, whatever the connection I have opened. So I'm gonna close the connection. That is sr dot close is the way I have to use that. So sr dot, I think the name I've given is sr dot close. Done. Now the connections and everything is closed. Let me build the solution. And if it is succeeded, then I'll take the output to a new audit transformation and see whether the data is reading from the file properly or not. So the third output is available for the script component, and you can see the file info is giving. Now let me set a data viewer here. And as you are aware that the data is coming properly through the remaining pipeline, so I'll remove the data viewers here so that it will be easy for us if you have only one data viewer open instead of all the three. So let me delete this guy and execute this. So I think I have written some junk condition, that's why it is going for a lot of nulls, or there is a lot of null values in, the file is going. So if you see, it is looping through the file, through the values in the file, and it is reading here. And I have not set the first column as column name, the first row as column name. That's why the file path also coming as the value in this one. So this is how you can connect to, oops, it will continue here. I think I've given a wrong statement there inside that, the looping part. So that's why it is continuing. So what I'm trying to say here is you can connect to SQL Server, or you can connect to flat file, or you can provide direct inputs. So whatever way you want, you can use the script component as a source in many ways. In the same way, if you drag and drop script component, and if you select it as transformation, you can use the data that is flowing through it. Okay. And here you will have input columns, whatever the columns that are coming through the input through the pipeline, and output columns you can define whatever the columns you want as output. So here there is only input columns, and I'm adding an output column. I'll name it as string. Sorry, I'll set the data type as string. Okay, let the column name be column, or I'll name it as test. Now if you go to script component, here what you can do is you can do whatever the value that is coming in the row, you can assign it to it, assign the value to it. I'll show you that. There is a function, there is a method which is overridden, that is input o underscore process input row. Process input row is the one where you will have a row variable of type input o buffer. Now what you can do here is row dot, what is the name of the output I've given, that is test, right, is equal, row of test is equal to row dot inputs also will be available here. What are the inputs that I have for this? I think ID is there. ID dot, I'm converting it to string. I think it's an integer, that's why. I'm giving some space. What is the second column available? Second input available, row dot name, I think, yes. Plus I'm giving some space, and finally row dot, there is one more column. I'm concatenating all the three values and pushing it into one output, that is row dot test. So this is row dot designation, I guess. Okay, now I'm concatenating these three inputs and creating one row, one output, that is test. Now and the function, the method that you have to use is override is process input row for this one. And let me click on build, click on close, and let me use another audit transformation, and let me delete this guy here. This is too dangerous here. Okay, and I'll take the output of this one to the input of this. and let me have a data viewer here. And let me edit the script. I think the looping is the problem. Let me set the loop here properly. The loop should be outside actually. I have kept it inside, that created problem. This is fine actually. Okay, fine. Let me remove it for now. Build. Let me close it. And now let me execute it. So in the transformation I'm using to get all the input rows, and I'm concatenating 3 values and passing through one output, that is test column. Let's see whether it retrieves the expected result or not. So now it hit the data viewer, and you can see a column called test has been created, and it is the concatenation of all the 3 values that is flowing through it. That is ID, name and designation. 1 space Rupesh space PL and 2 space Lokesh space PM. In the same way, you can use connections and all in the script component which you are using as transformation, and you can have huge functionality. But it all depends on your expertise level on .NET. So I don't think that I need to explain the script component as transformation. So the same way it follows, whatever it has followed for the script component, instead of select statement, what you will go for? You will go for insert statement. You'll be getting input values. You will use those values and you will be inserting into the SQL Server database, or you can write it to the text file. You can do magics with the .NET language, right? So you can achieve all those stuff using the script component as destination. So this is how you can write. You can extend the functionality. You can create your own custom data sources, transformations and destinations using the script component. This is very, very powerful if you're good in .NET. So that is about that. Let's jump into the next transformation. Let's cover one more transformation and we can close the session for the day after that. So the next one is OLE DB command. What is the use of this OLE DB command? Let's say I am getting 10 rows. So it will loop through, and if you want to insert 10 rows, what you can do? Let's say you have a 10 records in a file. You can insert, or you can delete, or you can update, you can execute anything for all the rows that is flowing. For example, let me connect to the flat file, and I'm getting the images, the same connection, and let me see the preview, and I'm getting all the file paths. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give the connection to this. So now I have 12 values, 12 records in this flat file source, right? If you see the preview, I can see 12 records, 1.jpg, 2.jpg, and so on till 12.jpg. So for every record, this will be executed. For every record, let's say 1 million records are there. So 1 million times it executed. So here in this case, what you are going to give is you are going to, let me connect to AdventureWorks DW where I have that image underscore test table. I think that is here. And here if you see, you can write a command like insert or update or delete. I'm writing an insert into image underscore test is the table name, and I'm inserting only one column, that is path value. I'm giving question mark. So this is how you give variables, right? So I'm giving question mark. That means insert into image underscore test of path values question mark. So if the source is having 100 records, so for every record, first time it will take first record value, second time it will take second record. So it will execute for every row, how many it is getting. Now there is one question mark, right? One second, guys. Connection managers. So when you come to column mapping, it will see the question mark is there, right? For that it will take param 0. If there is 2 question marks, it will take param 0, param 1. So the input column is file path where you want to assign that. If you have more than one input column, all the input columns will be showing here. So I'm mapping it to param 0. That means insert into image underscore test of path values. The first path will be set here for the when it gets the first row. For second row, second path. Third row, third path, and so on. It will continue the same way until it reaches the last record. Now let me execute it and see whether it loads the records into the database. I have 12 records in the file, right? Let's see whether the 12 records will be successfully inserted into the table. And remember, I'm sending only path column. I'm not giving all the values for the remaining 2 columns. That is, one is identity, another one is image type. So this is successful. Let me go here and let me execute it. And you can see it has become 24. Earlier it was 12. Now 12 added. And if you want to test that, for the second 12, there won't be picture. Why? Because I'm pulling only the record. So now I'll show you with the diagram here how it works. Let's say you have the pen is not properly working. Let me take a different color one. Okay, very good. The pen is not working. Let me take MS Paint. At least here it should work. I'm taking the pen. So let's say you have a table with 20 records. Okay, don't say that you draw only 3 records and saying 20. Let's say you have 20, and this component, OLE DB component, you can write any command like insert into or delete from or update from and so on, where some question mark will be there, right? Or values, right? Like I have shown you, insert into table name where values in bracket question mark, and so on. Here, if you are getting 3 columns, let's assume 3 column values, and here you have 3 question marks. So the first question mark you can map to this one, as I showed you in the mapping page, and second question mark, second value to second question mark, third to third question mark, like this. Okay. Once it is done, when it start executing the first record, for the first record, this query will be executed. For the second record, this query will be executed. For the third record, this query will be executed with the values that are present in the third record. Like that, it will continue for all the records. So this is really helpful when you want to load the records or when you want to execute some stored procedure. Let's say you have a stored procedure and you have to execute stored procedure for 12 months. For month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5, month 6, month 7, and so on. So if you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 as input, you can execute the stored procedure, like call the stored procedure and pass the variable value. Like the stored procedure will be executed for all the months. So if you want a query, an insert statement, an update statement, or a delete statement to be executed for all the records that are coming through the pipeline, so from the source, then you can go for OLE DB command transformation. And this is about OLE DB command transformation. Hope you understood the concepts, and thank you for your time, guys. And tomorrow we'll be discussing about all the lookup, fuzzy lookup, and so on. And we're going to put an end for the transformations in tomorrow's session. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Bye-bye.